We're going to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. It's August 8th, 2022, and the time 7:01 p.m. And I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Here.
Trustee Crum.
Here.
Trustee Harper.
Here.
Trustee Guillermo.
Here.
Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Mayor Kerman.
Here.
All board members in attendance.
Thank you very much. Gloria, do we have any revisions to this evening's agenda?
We did do a couple of updates to some of the agenda items, and the public has can access this through the link that they have through Google. And that would include a memo on the Zanoni property as well as an invoice from 9318.
Okay, great. So just supplemental materials, but no revisions to the agenda itself. Perfect. All right, at this time, and board, any revisions to the agenda? Okay, cool. At this time, we'll open up for public comment. We'll start with in-person comment and then move to Zoom comments. Please introduce yourself, and then we'll give you 3 minutes of time.
Okay. I'm the only one here. There are two things that make this town really lucky. Number one, we have Sally Barney as a trustee. The second thing that makes us lucky is that we know how to use Zoom. This is such a great town board. And Sally is such a great trustee. The voters have said so. Isn't she Mayor Pro Tem? Is it? Yeah. The highest vote getter. This town board and all of you all have gotten so much done. I'm just urging you to keep up the continuity and support Sally in this moment.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm Judy Graham.
Judy. All right, we'll now look at Zoom for public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment, please click the raise hand button and we'll promote you to panelists. All right, seeing none, we will close this public comment and move on. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Public comment is not closed. We're now promoting our Zoom attendees to be able to speak.
Sorry about that. I'm
Oh,
Katie.
no worries.
Hi. I am Katie Shapiro, and I just wanted to call in as someone who's worked with Sally professionally and known her personally for over a decade. And I trust that she's working with the best interest of the board and our community. And I support her staying on the board for the duration of her term. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. We have someone on Zoom and then we can come back to in person.
You're still muted and on the video.
Hi, am I okay to speak or are you calling on someone else? Sorry.
Oh, you're up.
Great. Okay, hi, I'm Kirsty. I live in Silverton. I support Sally being able to stay on the Board of Trustees through her the time that she is not in Silverton, actually, physically.
Thank you. All right, we had a couple new in-person folks join, so we'll go back to in-person public comment. So please introduce yourself and then we'll have a 3-minute timer.
Hi, my name is Chris Gober, and I'm a resident of Silverton. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I support Sally, whatever decision Sally makes with you all about whether she stays on the board. And I really hope that we can just clarify a lot of the things that just aren't true that are going around town about Sally's leave of absence at school, and not really make that a part of this at all. So I wanted to share that. And I know you guys will make the best decision. I know Sally will make the best decision for our town, and I trust her to do that.
Hi, I'm Zach Harris. I wanted to speak out in support of Sally as well. I think that, like the last person just said, I trust that she will make the right decision for this town and for herself. I think also we've seen over the past several years that people can participate effectively from Zoom remotely. We've seen that throughout this pandemic. I think that there is no reason in my mind why that shouldn't continue for personal reasons throughout, as long as the person stays a member of the community and stays a member of the, legally someone who lives here and votes here, then I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to participate remotely. Additionally, I think it brings flavor to the town to have our residents and our Board of Trustees go out and do these things across the world and be able to bring that culture and that flavor back to Silverton. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, looks like we have a couple new Zoom attendees as well. So if anyone would like to make a public comment, please click the raise hand button. We'll promote you to panelist. Okay, now seeing none, we'll close this opening public comment and move along to the next item on our agenda, which is new business item 4A, consideration to approve San Juan Development's Main Street application.
And so we have Beth Kramer here with San Juan Development. If you could please
Come on.
promote her to panelist. She has a short presentation that she would like to share with you all.
Great, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hi Beth. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to present today. I appreciate that. So I will jump right into it. So I'm here today to tell you about a program that the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA, has to offer, and that I would like to apply on behalf for San Juan Development Association to become a Main Street community. So I'll tell you a little bit about that, and then also about the application. In order to be a Main Street community, you need to have an organization, be the program administrator, which would be San Juan Development Association, but we would need the support of the town of Silverton. So So the Main Street movement is actually a national movement. We have more than 1,400 communities nationwide, and there's 22 here in Colorado. And is housed, like I said, within the Department of Local Affairs. The program really has 4 different pillars. So the first is our organization or civic. So creating a sense of ownership for the town. The next is physical design. So incorporating a sense of place and using our current historic assets in order to promote them to create our culture. The next is economic vitality and creating a vibrant and sustainable economic division here in Silverton. And the final is promotion. So letting people know who we are and promoting all our beautiful assets here in town. Becoming a Main Street community has a variety of benefits, but some of them are listed here below. We are, if we're awarded to become a community, we are awarded annual mini grants from $25,000 up to $10,000 per year to help with different projects that support those 4 pillars. We're also able to get some scholarships to help support the development of those that are working in those projects for professional development or ability to travel to other areas to learn about how other programs can help benefit Silverton. We're also able to utilize their consulting services. That can range between $5,000 to $50,000 per year for free, and support other types of technical assistance projects, trainings, webinars, resources, and also having the ability for San Juan to be connected into a national network of other communities. Some of the mini grant projects that the Main Street, Colorado Main Streets here are working on are artwork support for vacant storefronts, pocket park installations, website improvements, EV stations, lighting, alleyway improvements, signs, benches, wayfinding, and a whole host of others. Some recent consulting projects that Main Street community has helped other Colorado towns and cities work on is different strategies and work plans, board of director trainings and retreats, parking assessments, messaging, market analysis, wayfinding plans, business building and property inventories, and much more. And then something that I think is really important to Silverton that we could also take advantage of is the preservation support. So research and recommendations and concept drawings as we try to continue to preserve our downtown community. They also are able to provide education and training for businesses and owners about trainings, workshops, and walking tours that we can do in order to maintain our historic community. And then help support around public space designs like parks and wayfinding. So in order to apply, we do have some prerequisites that we'll have to, San Juan Development will have to identify. A dedicated and champion and point of contact, which will, I'm requesting to be out of San Juan Development Association, and a board of directors that will help support this initiative. We'll have to create a MOU with the Main Street program and have volunteers and staff attend different trainings and information sessions during the week. We'll have to have a strategic plan with visioning for those 4 points. A great part of this application is that they're able to assist us with that technical assessment to create this strategic plan for their 4 points. And it's something that we can absolutely utilize the recent main master plan draft into that. Community awareness, so part of the reason why I'm here today to have that awareness, and then also support from the town of Silverton. And then in order to maintain status, we need to adhere to those prerequisites, sign and maintain an MOU with DOLA. San Juan Development will submit quarterly reports and statistics and attend trainings. The Main Street organization does annual visits to each of their towns. So San Juan Development would host one of their visits here yearly, and annual evaluation. and present annually to the town of trustees as yourself. So just leaving here with you this last thought, as San Juan Development Association, I think this program could really help support, not only in my organization, our organization, but also the town of Silverton. This is the same program that we were awarded the Main Street Open for Business funds. And I think that there's a lot of other applications and assistance that we can utilize through their programming. So I'm open to having any questions at this time, but really interested to see if you support San Juan Development's application in this endeavor.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth.
Awesome.
Any questions or?
So Beth, in the presentation that you sent us, there was an estimated ROI for the Colorado Main Street program. And there's a pretty significant jump from 18 to 19 and then back down in 2020. I didn't really understand this, like what made that for every dollar spent go from 21 to 31 to 11.
Those results from the COVID pandemic. So you can see afterwards it then, I believe, started to increase.
So after 2020, it did again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
our presentation only went from 2017 to 2020. That's why that makes sense.
Yeah, I have a question. How will the board of directors be selected?
That's a great question. And as part of that application where we need to identify the Main Street program, I did have a discussion with them earlier last week. They do recommend kind of this similar makeup of our San Juan Development Association board, but adding in additional persons as representation from a business owner on Main Street, possibly someone from the creative district as well, because that's another program that can help support it. But that's something that we'll identify throughout the application.
Beth, would you serve initially as the primary point of contact?
I would, so San Juan Development would be the program administrator and I would be the primary contact.
Awesome. And if this is supported this evening, what's the timeline look like?
Great question. So they want to get in front of both the San Juan Development Association board and the trustees. So we're identifying times in October for both my board and the trustees, if that allows within your scheduling. Then I'll work on an application. And part of that application, a major part of that application is the strategic plan for meeting those 4 different pillars. That's when they'll set me up with their consulting services for free, and it'll take about a 2 to 3 month kind of period. So we hope to apply in April and then have a review in the beginning of May.
Great, thank you. It seems like we would just, if we got it through in May, we would qualify to apply for that mini grant and scholarship program before the end of June.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I thought this was an interesting thought, especially considering what we talked about being certified local government and what we're talking about with the Historic Review Board and what we're trying to do on Main Street. So I saw a lot of synergy there. And like you said, Beth, making sure that we can capitalize on our master plan and use stuff that we already have and not reinvent the wheel, I think would be helpful. But yeah, if you're willing to take this on, it seems like a great opportunity. Is there any cost to the town upfront and to San Juan County besides your time?
No.
Thanks.
Beth, do you have any projects on the Main Street current mini grant projects? There are some examples, I think, of generally how communities have implemented, but do you have projects in mind ahead of time, or is that something that the steering committee or the town, like, is that a collaborative process that identifies those? What's the direction of identifying projects?
Yeah, so absolutely it'd be collaborative, but I also think that there's a lot of projects that we can pull from the master plan as it gets developed to support some of these initiatives. I know that part of the master plan was identifying ways that we can reach our goals. And I think that some of these support through the Main Street program will help us, if not with funding, then definitely with guiding the network and then technical consulting along the way.
Yeah, it seems like a really good fit there. Thanks.
Mhm. Well, and even thinking back to our goal of wanting to implement some of the great plans we already have. We've had lots of great consultants who have helped us come up with some really great plans that everybody would love to see happen. And so I think leveraging this opportunity to execute some of those and carry others into the future would be great.
So this evening, are you just looking for direction from us that we support you pursuing the application and then we'll schedule that joint meeting? Or is there a motion requested this evening to approve the idea of putting an application together?
I don't believe there needs to be a motion, but I would appreciate direction. Part of the, like I said, part of this is I need support from the town. There will need a, Gloria, the referendum created. Or a referendum in order to.
Yeah, we'll do a
support-
resolution.
Resolution, I'm sorry, yeah. So eventually, as I get near to the application, I will need to request a resolution by the trustees that actually affirms their support. And so just before going down that path, I'd like to make sure that this is the path that you'd like me to take.
Wonderful.
So that's because we're applying for this as a municipality, town, city organization.
Yeah.
Great.
Does anyone have any concerns? It sounds like everybody's supportive, but just confirming. Awesome. Yeah, we are in support, it looks like.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and I'll keep you updated.
All right, thank you, Beth. All right, our next agenda item is new business 4B, consideration to approve the first reading of ordinance 2022-08, an ordinance of the town of Silverton for a limited rezoning and amending the official zoning map regarding property known as 124 East 9th Street, Silverton, Colorado.
And so this is for the rezoning from currently an R2 to a business pedestrian to allow low impact repair shop. In your packet, there's a memo from Lucy describing the approved conditions. This has been recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by the Board of Trustees. His application has, and now the second part is the ordinance to do the rezoning.
My recollection is just a tiny bit foggy. Was there another, like, a word included? Was it like limited BP or something like that, as opposed to just full blown BP?
Yeah, and Clay is on the line. He was able to draft this ordinance for us. Limited is in the ordinance, but he can kind of help explain that a little bit more. Clay, are you here?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Clay.
Hey, guys. Let me pull it up. And to buy myself time while I pull that ordinance up, can you rephrase the question for me?
Yeah, so when we approved this in the public, what was that? In the public hearing, I think that the request was to rezone from R2 to, it was like limited BP, or there was some qualifier. I was curious if we should reference that same qualifier or if it's taken care of and how this is drafted.
Right. So the trick, so a limited rezoning, what I had discussed with Gloria, and Gloria, correct me if my memory isn't serving me correctly, is that the idea was that you wanted the rezoning to revert back to its original zoning if, you know, whatever that property wasn't being used for the limited, you know, reasons you were rezoning. Is that correct? Yeah,
but my question was more driving at the conditions. So I I guess the resolution says it's rezoned as BP subject to the conditions approved as opposed to being full-blown BP, which would have a number of other uses by right and unrestricted like vacation rental uses and other things like that.
Right.
And so I guess my question is, do we need to clarify that, or is it sufficient to just say this is rezoned as BP subject to the conditions of approval?
Well, I mean, I think when I wrote that, my understanding was that it was subject to the approval of the sketch plan or the final plan for the actual building and use itself. I don't think this document limits the use beyond that. And I don't know how you could, I mean, I don't know what, if you change the zoning, you change the zoning. And so then you can place contingencies on, you know, like the building plan that's submitted along with the application to rezone, but you can't create a new zoning definition that has the all different little, you know, contingencies and things in it. That's not what limited zoning is. And so you are changing the zoning. It's going to be a garage, and then it'll always be able to be used as a garage unless it's zoned back to another use.
Gotcha. I think I'm still just a little foggy. I just pulled up the public hearing memo and it referred to BP-L as Business Pedestrian Limited Overlay District. And so I just want to make sure we're referring to the right section of the zoning code and specific type of zoning in this ordinance. And and it sounds like you're saying we are, and that this BP-L isn't really a thing, and that the way it's in the ordinance is totally fine. But I just wanted to, it was more of like a grammatical thing than a substantive thing.
Sure, and I'm happy to change it so that everybody likes it. I know that I try to do my best based on, you know, the minutes and the direction I was given, but that, you know, that doesn't always map out to what the board wants. And so I'm happy to discuss it and or make the changes to it. I think that what this document does is change it. Basically, you're changing it to BP, and it's an only conditional subject, or the only subjects that it's conditioned to is insofar that it's connected with the building plan, because, you know, he's expanding, from what I understand, they're expanding a garage. It's been used as a garage previously, even though it wasn't technically zoned as that, and now it's going to its base zoning, and the only way to get it back would be to change the base zoning back. And I think I put in the email or somewhere that, you know, that's easier said than done, because once you change the zoning and you allow that property for a certain use, it'd be very difficult to go back.
I thought that BPL, and we discussed this at length in the planning commission meeting, and then I thought we covered it in our last meeting here, but the L also meant that if the person applying for rezoning didn't use that property in the way that we had rezoned it within X amount of time, it reverted back. And that we could also, upon sale of that property, reconsider whether or not we were going to allow that to remain BP limited.
I mean, I think that's an okay way to think about it. I think what you really need to determine is that if you want it to be used for a specific purpose, you probably just need to, you know, draft some sort of development improvement agreement with the owner that coincides with this, and then have it on record that, you know, the town, of course, always reserves the right to rezone the property. And then if they violate the development improvement agreement, then you're just going to rezone the property. But there's nothing, the reason I don't think that's a great idea to do this like contingency where it reverts back if they don't do a certain thing, is because you'd still have to take direct action to rezone it as a board. And you don't need, there's nothing like that you can put in writing that automatically changes the zoning back. There's no like auto revert zoning because you list an L next to it. And so that's kind of why I kind of steered away from that, is because it just seemed it didn't seem like it was going to be effective or efficient for the town, because you'd still have to go back, notice it, and rezone it, and then, you know, change your zoning map, and all those things take notifications and time, you know, due to the statute. And so putting that little identifier in there, I felt like maybe muddied the water a little bit for the rezone itself. And I feel like you can accomplish what you need to accomplish in the dealing with the application for the building expansion, those improvements. And then if it does, say, for example, get sold and somebody's like, I don't want to use this for a garage anymore, and it makes sense to rezone it back to residential, then you always have the right to do that as a board, regardless of, you know, what's going on with the property.
I think the concern I have is not necessarily the rezoning back to residential, but by my understanding to what Tyler was saying was by putting in the limited, it meant that the property carried with it the conditions that were originally put into the planning documents. And so if they were to sell the property, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Clayton, but it sounds like what you're saying, that if they were to sell the property, the BP zoning would just stay with the property and the new owners could do whatever is currently allowed in BP zoning. And I thought from our discussion as a board, we wanted a little bit more framework around it where the BP zoning was limited to what had been originally approved in the planning documents with the applicant. And if it did get sold, it would, any change in that would trigger a certain type of review. And again, maybe I'm not understanding this correctly, or our discussion, but that was my understanding of the limited designation. But maybe someone else has thoughts from that conversation.
Because the concern isn't necessarily that it would revert back to a residential property. The concern would be that as a new BP zoned property, that the uses there could expand beyond what the conditions are potentially limiting the property for right now, as what the applicant has asked for.
Low impact repair shop.
Sorry,
Low impact repair shop. I keep going back to the BP to allow a low impact repair shop. So I can do that.
Can I jump back in for a quick second?
Yeah.
So I didn't intend to reopen the discussion of of the substance of it. I mostly just was viewing it as we made a decision at a public hearing and I just wasn't sure that the resolution specifically conformed to that decision. And I just wanted to make sure that not referring to the L was non-substantive. Now, what I'm hearing is it doesn't sound like people are too concerned with the revision or the reversion aspect of it, but they want to make sure that the conditions of approval to have this specific use within BP stay with the property. So that is a substantive kind of like add-on to the initial question that I asked.
Yeah, so I think the only way you do that is not through a zoning, but through an agreement with the owner that would trigger some sort of review. What I'm trying to avoid, and I'm not doing a great job explaining it, and not at dealing with adding limitations to the actual rezone is that, you know, a limited zoning, which you don't have, there's nothing in your zoning code that says BPL or L-BP. You would just be making it up. And so
there is an L referenced in it. I'm looking at section 16.310A.
Okay.
It has a limited use overlay district as a,
Division 4, section 16-4.
yeah.
510.
So there's a reference to
yeah,
it.
so that's kind of gets to, so that's perfect. So, and again, I guess I'm having a terrible time with this one to explain this, but there's a very specific definition of like, so limited, like if there's like a BPL limited, you know, that what that is a zoning that's limited to certain uses within that zoning, right? And unless you define that in the code itself, it doesn't run with the property. And so you're better off to, if you wanted to grant the rezoning for a limited purpose that isn't specifically designated in the code, you want to do like, you do want to create that. I think Trustee Kramer just said, you want to create that overlay district through like a plan unit, like a small plan unit development agreement or a development agreement or something along those lines, where you have a separate, you know, contract with the owner that says, hey, yeah, we'll rezone this, but we're gonna create this overlay district with this planned development agreement between you and us that is almost like creating like CCRs in an HOA, right? You have these use restrictions, and this is your use restriction, and you're agreeing to it, so that, and then that overlay, PUD, GI, whatever you want to call it, gets recorded with the property rather than just having a L designation on the zone map, because that's going to get lost in the sauce. And if you go to the code, it's not going to say, oh, you can only do this or that. You're going to have to go back to minutes and go back. So the best way to do it is to create like an overlay district or an agreement with the owner. And then that will trigger the board to review the zoning if and when it transfers, ownership, et cetera. And you record that with the property, then it runs with the property. And when there's a new board in 10, 15 years and a new owner, all of a sudden it triggers it correctly. And the new board looks at it and says, oh, I wasn't here for this. I have no idea what's going on. What does BPL mean? Versus, oh, here's this PUD overlay district on this one piece of property. Let's go look at what the restrictions of use are on this property. And it'll say, for the garage only, light industrial or small, whatever that you guys are saying, low impact repair shop. And then they'll know that that's what it was meant for. And that will trigger them to do a review and either rezone it or allow for another particular use when it transfers ownership.
Gotcha. I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I thought what we approved at the public hearing was that limited use overlay district as a BP underlying zone, as opposed to just a general BP rezoning with the development of the building subject to these conditions, which I think those are the two categories we're talking about. Am I correct? Like we can have this essentially PUD type framework agreement with the landowner, or we can have these conditions that we approve this subject to, but that really only applies to this owner and their development of this land. But if they sell, they're just selling a BP parcel that could then be anything subject to BP.
And that's how this is drafted. And insofar that I just like missed the mark on it, I apologize, and I'll just have to redraft it to make it match that. I was not tracking all of that. And again, that comes down to just translation with what you meant by the limited use. And I thought that was being covered by the final design review of the actual, the sketch plan and final plan approval. So I apologize that I didn't understand that.
No worries. I just want to also check in with everybody. Am I summarizing? Is my understanding the same as your understanding in terms of what we thought we were approved in terms of the limited use?
Yeah.
So I think the best thing to do would be to table this, listen to the minutes of that decision, just to make sure that we're not remembering it poorly.
Does that have an impact on the property owner's need for timeline of development?
You probably are coming up on that. And I know that the owner is already like building and going forward, but you also on the record approved the use that he wants it for. And rezoning it, you could easily just rezone it and then come up with the overlay district and just make sure that the BP zoning is subject to that the owner understands that the BP zoning is subject to him signing that agreement, whatever that agreement looks like in the future. Because there's just nothing there right now to enforce it. Even if we did a BPL, the rezoning and the plat and the zoning map isn't the same place you want to have all the information and restrictions regarding an overlay district, because it's just confusing. You want it in a separate document recorded with the property, not just in your zoning map. And so I think you can move forward with, if you wanted to, I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, you could move forward with rezoning it and just make it contingent on the owner, assigning the PUD agreement to create the overlay district. or something
Yeah, because
along
it
those lines.
strikes me that we had a lot of agreement on the use that, we felt really comfortable with what the applicant was proposing and the conditions that were in there, and there was agreement with the applicant. It sounds like the sticking point, at least from what I remember and what I hear people saying, was it's the after the fact that we didn't want to open up this parcel to be used for anything that is within the BP zoning. And so whatever we can do to help keep the applicant on track, because we all felt really good about what was happening there, while also protecting what the intent was for the future. I don't know.
My suggestion is then, because you already agreed to it and because the owner already agreed to it and it's all on the record and in the minutes, I think you should feel comfortable going forward with the rezoning, which has to happen anyway. And then we draft a very simple planned unit development agreement between the town and the owner and record it with the property, and everything's covered.
Great.
Okay. So in that case, we would consider a motion to conduct the first reading of ordinance 2022-08, an ordinance of the town of Silverton for limited rezoning and amending the official zoning map regarding property known as 124 East 9th Street, Silverton, Colorado, conditioned on this future agreement with the landowner to create a PUD with these specific conditions.
And I'll have a PUD ready for you by second reading, so you don't even have to wait. That'll be easy, and I'll just draft it and it'll mirror the conversation and the understanding that you guys came to, and he should have, or she should have, no difficulty in signing the PUD, and then everybody's happy.
Great.
So moved.
Thank you. Matt just stepped out for a second, so we'll just wait a moment for roll
Oh,
call.
no.
Is he okay? He looks like he was limping.
Are you okay, Matt? Okay. We just had a motion that mirrored the motion in the memo.
Yeah.
Qualified by the condition that we'll also get a PUD with the landowner with the conditions listed in the memo. And it was moved by Sally and seconded by Jim.
Okay, and roll call is Trustee Davis,
Yes.
Trustee Granger,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Birma. Yes. Trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Fermi.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Clay. I think I may have confused that a little bit at the beginning, but I appreciate you bearing with us.
No worries.
All right, the next item on our agenda is new business 4C, consideration to approve the snowmobile club's grooming grant application.
I would like to apologize that there's no memo with this item, but the $49,803 of grant funds would be used for grooming at Mollison in town. And Jim Loki has applied for this in the past very successfully. And we're asking for your support again this year.
Yeah, this is an awesome asset, and it's really great that there's someone in the community that wants to take this on.
I wanted to put on the record that our family had a wonderful time there this winter, and we were helped out with broken down snowmobiles on multiple occasions by these lovely folks. So we appreciate that effort up there.
And I think it includes something like 104 miles of trail. I
Yeah,
can't find
significant.
the exact number. Oh, yeah, 104 miles of trails. That's a lot of miles.
So would someone like to make a motion to approve the Snowmobile Club's grooming grant application?
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Davis,
Yes.
Trustee Granger,
Yes.
Trustee Harper. Yes. Trustee Birma. Yes. Trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Fermi.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. And thank you, Snowmobile Club. All right, moving on to our next item, new business 4D, consideration to approve Trustee Barney, Mayor Pro Tem Barney's remote meeting request.
I'll step out for this.
As you are
Because
formally
I-
recusing.
I'm formally recusing as the trustee.
Oh, thanks.
And I can introduce this, but it's pretty straightforward at this point. Trustee Barney has submitted a letter of dates that she is requesting to Zoom into meetings. Last meeting, we adopted a remote attendance policy, giving you all the framework to evaluate this type of request. And if you need any more context, Clay and I are here.
Sure, I can kick off a question. I mean, we heard support tonight. We heard some concern at the last meeting. And I think the underlying question that people are concerned about is, what constitutes a full-time resident eligible to sit on the board of trustees, and are the time periods requested going to create an issue for maintaining that requirement that's required by the code? And I guess that's directed.
Isn't residency spelled out for somebody running? Like, isn't that already defined? Quite clearly?
Well, I think part of it, yes. And I think part of it's also just addressing the concern directly, which is, is there an argument that the number of meetings missed qualifies as not being a resident of Silverton, or is that not an issue? And also ensuring that this decision doesn't open up the opportunity for part-time residents to be eligible for trustee seats. And I think this is the first time we're really looking at something like this. So I just wanted to raise those two questions because I think they're valid, and they were raised by the community last meeting. So I'm hoping maybe Clayton, if you feel comfortable, is there any guidance you can provide in terms of what factors to consider?
Sure. And it's, you're going to have to bear with me. You recently passed the resolution 2022-13 that gives the board, that encourages in-person attendance, obviously, but then gives the board the ability to determine whether or not a person's, remote attendance is going to be a hindrance to the board, or if they just don't want to do it. So that, that's C3 that says if the member is unable to attend for any of those reasons listed, the members physically present at the board meeting have to make a finding that the requesting member has satisfied the requirements of this policy, and ultimately approve the requests. So the question, and like you asked, comes to residency. In Colorado, there was a landmark decision that was very closely based on this, where a person's residency was challenged for multiple issues, but the person sued the town basically to say that, no, I want to be considered a resident for the purpose of, being on the board or voting or whatever the case may be. And what they decided was that the most important and largest central factor in determining residency is intent to return. When you're making an analysis regarding someone who's left and whether or not they've maintained their residency or not. And so the case does list a series of factors to consider. And so what they say is that if the person's principal place or primary home or place of abode is their main fixed place of habitation, and to which a person, whenever he or she is absent, has the present intention of returning after departure, and then it even specifies regardless of the duration of the absence, is used to determine the person's residency. And then it lists other things that you can take into account: business pursuits, employment, income sources, residence for income or other tax purposes, age, marital status, residence of parents, spouse, and children, leasehold, situs of personal and real property, and motor vehicle registration. Of course, IDs, et cetera, go into that. And so, I think the board could easily make a determination based on Colorado's definition of residency by talking with Mayor Pro Tem Barney and determining whether or not she intends to maintain her residency here, list Silverton as on her tax return, maintain Silverton as the address on her driver's license and vehicle registrations, etc. And that would meet the burden of the residency requirement as it's written in your code now. The other way to change it is to have a different type of requirement for those sitting on the board. But you'd have to change your code to do something like that. So for example, the statute is the same statute, different section is very clear that even like you could not ever require an employee to be a resident. But you could require, and you guys aren't considered employees. I'm just saying that because you're starting with this very big threshold that the state does not favor a residency requirement. So just keep that in mind. But for, for a trustee member, you could say something like the person has to live, reside full-time in town 10 months out of the year or something like that. Those aren't necessarily like best practice, but they haven't been directly overturned by any Colorado court. So there's little tricks to change policies to make people stay there. But as far as relying on Colorado's definition of residency, it's really going to come down to Mayor Pro Tem Barney's intent to return and maintain residence in Silverton. I know that's a lot to digest, but Colorado's law is very it's very open when it comes to residency, and it's a tough threshold to overcome. If Mayor Pro Tem Barney says she intends to return, I don't think you can hang your hat on the fact that you don't think she's a resident because she's traveling for a few months. The case that this was decided on was a person who had lived for years in New York and claimed a Colorado residency, even though she had a New York driver's license and paid taxes in New York. There was some evidence that she had intent to returning to this property she owned in New York in Colorado in this town, and she won the suit against the town for trying to exclude her from being a resident. So it sounds crazy, but that's the state of the law right now as far as case law goes in Colorado.
Thank you. I think that's a pretty helpful framework. Discussion. Questions? Thoughts?
I think for me, what's helpful when we're thinking about this conversation and hearing from different community members is, like Clayton said, there's not a lot of things that we as a board can do or we can do to establish residency requirements. That if someone is listing this as their primary residence, registering to vote here, all of these things, they could run for an election. They'd have to get elected, but they could run for an election. What I think is important to consider here is with this resolution for remote attendance, it gives us as a board of trustees a framework to say, does this person's participation still kind of flow with the cohesiveness we have as a group, with a lot of the momentum that we have? And I think I would ask the community, and I've asked myself, to at least trust Sally to make that determination on her own. If she thinks she's able to maintain her level of commitment to this community, like Clayton said, legally, it's just she's still legally able to be a part of this board. And so I have just thought it's really up to Sally to say, do you feel like being remote for a certain number of meetings, you're still able to maintain your level of commitment and engagement with this community? And I think her desire to remain on the board of trustees during this season of some transition, to me, is a real indication of that commitment, and her commitment to continue with some of the goals that we've set and be a part of this body and contribute to the work that we're all doing. So I would hope that in our community, we could have a little trust. I think that, we've had some really great cohesion and momentum. And my initial reaction when thinking about this was, it'd be a shame to lose some of that as with a different board or a changed board. So I'm hopeful that we can still make this work and trust each other as a community and recognize the commitment that's being demonstrated by even wanting to continue on as a board member. And I think, to me, this policy, I know there was a lot of concern about this policy, but as Clayton's articulated, it's very conditional and up to us as a body. And to me, it's not much different than if someone had an illness diagnosed that they needed to travel and be in Denver or a bigger city for a period of time, or was caring for a family member, or was on an extended vacation, or a family circumstance. So to me, this is not a Sally's moving away and packing a moving truck and selling our house. It's kind of an extenuating circumstance that's come up, and we all have had those during this tenure. This is a tough job. It requires a lot of commitment. And if there's ways that we can enable people who have a strong dedication to this community to serve in this role, I'm really supportive of that.
Thank you, Dana.
That was my soapbox. I just like working with you all.
I can echo some of the things Dana brought up, and then I think Chris Gober or Dasuvi brought up as well. Just Chris Chambers about just trusting Sally and trusting her ability to know whether or not she can stay committed and involved as she knows that she wants and needs to be in order to fulfill this position. So looking at the timeline, especially with being back middle of the winter and having this time away, I think it does bring value to her family, and then also just, our community to have these sorts of experiences and make it possible. I again will fall on I trust that Sally will make the best decision for Sally, which will also help the town of Silverton.
Yeah, and so I wasn't here last meeting. I did watch it finally. And it seems like there was a lot of concern over the length of time that Sally was going to be gone. And after speaking with Sally, I think that we should dispel the myth that she's moving away for a year. That's just not the case. Right? She'll be gone for a couple of months, then she will be back for several months, then she'll be gone for a couple of months again. She's not packing up and leaving for a year. That's not true. And then in last meeting, I feel like the discussion was about putting a policy in place for this in the future. So this particular policy, while it will affect her and maybe what she'll do in the future, right now, we just need to get the policy on the books for all of us moving forward, which I think is really important, as it has proved over the last couple of years that, Zoom, we can Zoom in from anywhere, we can attend meetings from everywhere. And more often than not, with the packets and the information that our staff put together, we can be really well prepared for those meetings based on what they send us. So I think it's important that we get some sort of resolution on the books that just focuses on whether we as trustees can attend remotely, for how long, et cetera. And then as far
for clarification, that's what we voted on last meeting.
Okay, and then
we adopted that.
That is adopted. Okay, that's where I got to, and then I clicked the thing. But so as far as Sally goes, there's a long history in Silverton of people giving a lot to this town and never really asking for anything in return, and then sort of not ever getting any recognition or even getting any of the, accolades that they deserve. And Sally has done a lot for Silverton. And I think that she's going to keep Silverton's best interest at the forefront by serving on this board. And I think after what she's done for us, for the community, for the children in Silverton, I think we can trust her to make the best decision moving forward about whether or not she'll be able to serve as an effective town board member. you know, if, I know there was a lot of concern out there, but if you trust her with your children, I think that you can trust her to serve remotely on the town board, so.
Jim or George?
Go for it. Well, give it to you, Jordan.
I'll go last.
All right. I'm gonna just start with a tangent that's somewhat related, but not related. I feel like a lot of the feedback we got is this symptom of a larger kind of broken town council system that in the future, I'd love to have a work session on kind of possibilities of reforming our town council. And I think that would solve some of these underlying issues that, you know, brought a lot of these comments to light. That being said, I don't see this as like a, I understand that it was brought up in the timing of Sally leaving, but it's not a Sally issue. She's a great person and totally support her unique request, but you know, I think the more inclusive we can make our local government, the better. I think this remote attendance policy could help or, you know, benefit in a litany of reasons why someone might not be able to attend in person, which I think Dana covered many of them when she brought it up. Yeah, totally support the more inclusive we can be as a local government.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks. To me, this is not a question about Sally's dedication. This is not a question of Sally Barney, period. Trustee Barney, Mayor Pro Tem Barney, has been an absolute asset to this board. A terrific asset to me and being able to work with her and sitting next to her. My major question with regards to this entire situation is the integrity of this board and the integrity of this community. It's not about Sally Barney. I support this. I support this agenda that was provided and the request that was presented to all of us. My personal belief is the integrity of this board and the integrity of this town with regards to how best to represent it. And how do we come together as a community? I too heard the passionate individuals from the last meeting and the beautiful, eloquent comments from tonight's meeting. I listen to them, and it's our job, each and every one of us, to understand what they're saying and the passions and the history behind what they're saying. I agree. I truly and fully support the itinerary that was provided by Sally. My biggest concern, and I think we as a board need to address this, is the integrity of the position, the seat, and how we can do the best job going forward in representing our community, our friends and neighbors that have entrusted us in our town. Yeah, that's all I got. I have notes. I got all sorts of stuff. But really what it comes down to is the seat, is the position, is the love and affinity for this community and for one another. So we should think everyone's spoken and we've all opined on the subject. I think we should put it to a vote.
Can I raise one question or comment for discussion real quick? I did have one thought, and that was if someone is going to be remote such as this for this period of time, does it make sense to reconsider the mayor pro tem position? And Sally and I had a chat with that, so that wasn't news to her, but just the idea that would it make sense to open up that discussion of having another mayor pro tem if she will be out of the town for that period, those periods of time. Thoughts, comments?
I think it's a good question.
Right there.
I feel like it muddies the waters a little bit,
Say more.
just by, it's like, okay, to a certain extent, but not all the way okay.
Mhm.
And so. That's my opinion, is that becomes a, what do we just talk about, the little L?
Limited,
Limited.
dash limited.
But that's just, I mean, I hear you and I understand. I think it maybe as someone who needs to know a little bit more about maybe what the pro tem position all really entails. But I think that, yeah.
I agree with the comment. I think practically, so the pro temp position is there to stand in for the mayor position in the event the mayor is unavailable. So I think practically it's definitely easier to facilitate the meeting in person. And so practically it's I think a good question to discuss whether or not someone else should be appointed. And if we have the power to appoint someone else as pro tem that's more likely to be here in person, should I be unavailable, or whoever the mayor is in the future. So I think it's a good thing to at least know what the rules around it are, and you know, if that's something we even delegate. Yeah, that rules are right here. And what do they say?
Well, it's the individual that facilitates the meeting if you're not here.
For sure. But our ability to like redelegate the title.
It's never happened before. But again, the qualifications of an officer being removed, what are the qualifications of a resident, non-resident? I mean, it's all right here. It's all on the website. It's a great point that Dana brought up. If you're traveling, if anyone else is traveling, who manages the meeting? Who helms the board? It's a great question.
Is it unreasonable that we can't just come to a consensus decision in the moment?
It would require both Sally and I to be unavailable, which is pretty unlikely. Hasn't happened yet. I would also note in the policy that we passed, the majority of those present can also reevaluate this approval. We can discontinue it if the participation results in unreasonable delays or interference in the meeting process. So there is the opportunity that if this doesn't work out, I do believe Sally would probably preemptively make a decision, but the board also seems to have the ability to reevaluate.
Well, and to Jordan's point, I'm not too worried. We have a lot of great cohesiveness. We have a lot of great momentum and ability to work together. So I'm just thinking like present or in the future, you know, what it looks like. So it's just a thought. But I think your point is valid, Jeff. I guess it was a question of like, if both of you were unavailable, I mean, does the pro tem ever sign documents or serve any other formal role besides facilitating the meeting if you were unavailable? No.
No,
Okay, so it's just meetings facilitation.
correct.
Well, there's also all the powers of the mayor that, like declaration of emergencies, et cetera, that the mayor pro tem would have to do. But again, the code provides for an option that you could appoint someone as acting mayor in the absence of both the mayor and the mayor pro tem. There's nothing. The big thing would be signatures and physically running the meeting as the considerations. But all, you know, if something were to come up, there's also, you have to think about as all the requirements of the mayor would be on the mayor pro tem. But again, it's a very rare circumstance, and it's something I think, I don't know what which trustee mentioned, it was very wise thought, which is you can, in the moment you could decide. You have a power as a board to appoint somebody acting mayor if there was an emergency and have that person act on behalf of and benefit of the town.
I believe the only other power the mayor has is that I don't know if it's ever been exercised, is the ability to make a proclamation.
Ah.
And one thing I wanted to point out real quickly to the board is, under your current policy, you're going to have to basically be making a determination or make a rolling determination that the Mayor Pro Tem Barney is not physically present due to travel, and that she's satisfied the requirements of the policy and can participate remotely. And you're just going to have to keep revisiting that. I don't think it's necessary for the board to make a determination now for the entire period of Mayor Pro Tem Barney's sabbatical or physical absence from Silverton. I think this is just hey, are we going to start are we going to let this happen as an idea? And you can revisit it at every meeting, and probably should, for the record, based on the policy, at least just state that, she's not here. We know she was not here. She has permission not to be here. And it's not negatively affecting the outcome or the process. And we find that she's satisfied the requirements of the policy, and we're going to, count her as a part of the quorum, even though she's remotely attending from wherever, and then move on. And so that'll give the board the opportunity to, revisit and discuss this if something does come up and you do start having problems. I don't think you're making a decision you're going to be stuck with for the next, 6 months. I think you're making a decision that you're going to get to revisit every meeting that you want to.
So for the purposes of tonight, would the motion, if the board chooses to make a motion to approve the request, would it be only with respect to a chunk of the meetings, or do we just generally consider approval of the request?
Mayor Furman, I think you can do it however you want. I think it's more efficient to kind of bite off a big chunk and say, we approve it subject to revisiting the policy if we feel like any of the policy is being violated and or the meetings aren't running in a proficient manner, and then you just deal with it. But what I'm saying is anything you decide now isn't going to entrench you in a situation that you can't get out of very easily at a future meeting or down the road.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Mayor Pro Tem Barney's request to attend the meetings remotely that she has specified.
Second.
According to our remote work policy.
You want to add the subject to that, Clayton?
Subject to revisiting this for discussion at future trustee meetings,
if necessary.
if necessary.
Second.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Franker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, she's not here, she's accused. And Mayor Furman.
Yes,
Motion passes 6-8 for recusal.
thank you. Cool.
So I guess a general question I have going forward is just so you get COVID and you're gonna do meetings remotely, so how long do we have to give in advance? Is it every meeting? It's now a new requirement for us as well to be more upfront about where we're gonna be for meetings, so on and so forth.
Was that a question for staff?
Was that Gloria?
Was that a question for staff?
Yeah, I guess he was asking under what circumstances do we now have to request permission and make a formal decision like this? If someone gets COVID the day before a meeting, do we just, make that request at the beginning of the meeting, or what's the process?
Well, and I think that would be for you all to decide, but Clayton unmuted. So
Yeah, the policy says sufficiently in advance of the meeting so the town can provide technical means necessary to fulfill such request. So, I mean, we have a standing Zoom meeting that isn't hard. I think it's really a matter of, hey, I'm sick, I can't show up physically, but I can be at home and I'd like to participate in this meeting remotely. And then just putting on the record when you do your roll call that, hey, you know, Mayor Furman is participating remotely due to COVID or due to travel or due to one of the other reasons that you're allowed to participate remotely. And then the board just like, good, and that's it. You just need to record it and make sure the board's good with it and move on. The threshold is that it's not to avoid physically attending a particular meeting for the convenience of the member, and that physically being present is the best practice and the expected type of participation. And so when you see a member possibly abusing that or whatever, then that's when you can have that discussion based on this policy.
Well, and I think that's the point that's beneficial for the community to hear is actually this policy doesn't make things more loosey-goosey. It brings a level of transparency and accountability, actually.
Agreed.
All right, so next item on our agenda is approval of consent agenda items.
I had one edit. I know Bruce Wayne would probably love to be Bruce Wayne, but he is not Batman.
Go ahead and make sure I get that
Thanks, man. I just thought it was funny.
because I am that.
No, no.
Oh, dang it. Must be.
Any other questions or comments for consent agenda? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Trustee Davis,
Yes.
trustee Cranker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierman,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is staff reports.
And I apologize, Matt and I have both been out with COVID. Matt's better at dealing with it than I am. But we were able to keep some projects moving forward. The focus has mainly been kind of just keeping things going and nothing really new right now. I miss you guys. You guys are all in person and I'm here now.
Oh,
I just thought it was really amazing all the work you guys were doing while you had COVID. And I know John Sites isn't on, but I thought the school zone signs look really great. And the mulch at the playground was much appreciated. So things are still happening even when you all are taken out.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments on staff reports? All right, moving along to committee reports. I don't believe we had any committee meetings since the last meeting. So then we move along to trustee reports. Any amazing updates?
I have a trustee report. It's with sad news that one of our team on the mountain rescue died last few days ago. And he was one of the longest serving members on our team. He'd been with us since the late 80s, Leo Lloyd, and he was a living legend in rescue. And he traveled all over the world teaching it, learning the newest techniques. And then our team became the beneficiary of it because he loved it here in Durango. So he would always bring back the latest techniques, the best ways to do things. And he would just always, teach us for free and share his knowledge with us. And the hole that he's going to be leaving in our community and in Durango, it's immeasurable. And so it's with great sadness that that I share that with you all, and a big loss for our team as well, because he still worked with us as often as he could, so. And there will be a celebration of life at Fort Lewis. It will be announced, I believe it's August 30th, but we're gonna put something in the paper to make sure everybody knows.
Sorry, Tyler. I wrote a statement. For the coming school year, that's September to May, as we've been discussing earlier in the meeting, our family is going to take advantage of a unique opportunity to spend more time together while exposing our children to enriching experiences. We are willingly choosing this opportunity. It's essential to me that our family's travel plans comply with all town policies and ordinances. In addition, I do not wish to pave the way for second homeowners or part-time residents of Silverton to serve the town council. As our family travels together, according to my husband's work schedule, it will require remote attendance to meetings, something I had my fair share of during COVID. I am dedicated to this commitment, determined to participate effectively, and I want to see it through. I trust the judgment of this board to support the best option for the community, and in my case, my unique case, and in future situations. The option to attend meetings remotely supports trustees who are essentially volunteers to work, care for children or family members, our own health, and maintain relationships with loved ones. It's new and different, and it's a great example of when technological advances outpace the social and political framework we currently have governing us. It's also a gift to our small town and our small population. I'm so grateful for everyone's ongoing support. I will gladly test this out for you all and get back to you with the benefits and challenges of the decision.
Thank you, Sally. All right. Next item on our agenda is continued business, Zanoni land purchase update.
Sure, and this was a supplemental packet too that I provided to you all. So we did an extension to the contract as well as an amendment to the contract to include a portion of the property that was originally intended to be go through a boundary adjustment to be parceled off. That boundary adjustment fell through on the meeting on the 11th, I think July 11th, we went into executive session, and I was given direction to pursue that additional property. They wanted an additional $30,000. I was able to ask DOLA for a supplemental grant in the amount of $30,000, but we would have to do a 20% match. So that's like a $24,000 extra to our grant that we received. In this, we were able to get that extra $25,000 for that extra piece of property, and we can close on the full property this week. So it's really exciting. So it just took me a little while to get better and to be able to kind of wrap my head around this, but we are basically tonight I'm asking a motion to approve the agreement to amend, extend the Zanoni contract, as well as the approval of the expenditure of the $430,000, of which $395,000 will be grant funded. And this is all dedicated for affordable housing within the grant parameters, but we can kind of land bank this until we are ready to develop it. So I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this.
Thank you. Any questions?
Great job.
I mean, I feel like when we had our two 2 trustee work session or visioning sessions ago, board retreats, and we talked about the idea of land banking and how it's important and how small this 0.8 square miles really is. It seemed somewhat overly ambitious and possibly unrealistic. And it's pretty amazing to see what Gloria and Beth and the rest of the teams working on this have done and what opportunities are actually coming to fruition now. And awesome community members willing to sell property to the town on an extended timeline.
I would have to say, Zanoni presented this to me last November and has been patiently awaiting this closing date. So huge thank you to the Zanoni families, to George, and to Dave has been helping with communication, and then Ernest as well.
I think it's just really something to celebrate. Again, even as we had approved even absorbing the cost of this additional funding, and Gloria didn't take that as an answer. She went and said, nope, I'm going to do better for the community. And so I think even during COVID, you're out there doing great work. And so even when we hear contrary opinions from our community, I think this is a great example of how we can come together and work on really big issues, and how we have a really shared vision for what could benefit this community and how we can work together towards that. So thank you for weathering that even while you're homesick.
So I jotted notes as quickly as I could, but I think
Yeah.
Gloria's looking for a motion to approve the agreement to extend the Zanoni contract and expend the additional dollars for the additional 0.07 acres. Is that right?
Well, so yeah, we had kind of already approved that. I just wanted to do it all publicly so that it was on the record. And yes, that would be correct. And then we do have the check that we would sign tonight for the closing.
Oh, wow. Cool. Exciting. So do you want to read that one more time and then someone can take it?
Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agreement extending the Zanoni contract to include this additional land as well as expending the additional dollars to purchase this additional land?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kramer.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Bierman.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Burns.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Full milestone.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the last item on our agenda. So now we'll move to the closing public comment. We do not have any in-person attendees. So if you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, please click the raise hand button and we will promote you to panelist. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and adjourn the meeting. Looking forward to seeing everybody at our work session on the 1st. That one's going to be pretty exciting. And then our regular meeting on the 7th. It is 8:29 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Thanks so much.
Your upcoming meeting dates. I like it.